What is the gospel? As we saw in yesterday's little video, we could summarize it under the big issues of God and man and Jesus Christ and our response to him. In this week, building up to Easter 2020, I want to take each aspect and just try and flesh that out every morning as part of these short little reflections, ending up on Thursday morning. Yesterday, we asked the question, who made us and to whom are we accountable? And the answer came, we are accountable to God. Well, this morning, on day 12 of lockdown, we continue to consider the next question, what is our problem? What is our problem? And Christians throughout all the centuries have answered that question with the same basic truth from the Bible. Our problem is our sin against God. Our problem is sin against God. To get to grips with that, we need to catapult right back to the beginning of our Bibles to see the early parts of that story unfolding. When God created the first human beings, Adam and Eve, in the Garden of Eden, he intended them to live under his righteous rule in a perfectly joyful relationship. That relationship was one that was supposed to be a joyful one of obedience towards God and submission to him and enjoying communion and fellowship and intimacy with God. But one dark day, that was all destroyed in an instant. When Adam disobeyed God by eating the one fruit that God had told him not to eat, that fellowship with God was shattered. In just one moment, Adam and Eve had declared their rebellion against God. They had just disregarded God's authority over their lives. Well, you might be sitting in your lounge or study or kitchen this morning asking the question, so what? That was them, not me. That's not me. I wasn't part of that original problem. That's their problem, not my problem. No, according to Scripture, it's your problem as well. You see, it's not just Adam and Eve who are guilty of sin. The Bible is crystal clear. In Romans chapter 3, verse 10, we read, there is no one who is righteous, no, not one. And just a few verses later in verse 23, we read, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Again, you might think that you don't have a sin problem. Why? Because we often downplay sin. Often we think that our sin is nothing more than a violation of some heavenly traffic law. I went 72 k's an hour in a 60-kilometer-hour zone. And so we wonder why God gets so upset about our sin. Surely there are people who are worse than us, right? But sin is so much more than that. Sin is not just a transgression of God's rules, God's law, the things that he wants us to do, his standards. Ultimately, sin is a rejection of God himself. It is a shaking of our fist at our Creator. It is a refusal of his right to exercise his rightful authority over his creation to those whom he gives life. Once we understand sin in that way, we begin to understand what the Bible means when we read, for the wages of sin is death. There is a consequence. Death, both physical death and spiritual death, is a consequence, a wage that comes as a result of sin. That means there is a forceful separating of us from our Creator. We are unholy where he is holy. He is righteous. We are unrighteous. And God very justly then, as a result of that, has created a final destiny for everyone who is living in sin, the unbelieving sinner. And that place is an eternal active place of judgment called hell. And that's the sobering verdict of Scripture. We read in Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 27, and just as it appointed for man to die once, after that comes judgment. Every single one of us will be held accountable before God. The Bible warns very, very clearly in John chapter 3 verse 18, whoever believes in him is not condemned, but here's the crunch. Whoever does not believe is condemned already because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God. Folk, that's our problem. Our problem is sin against God. And that's the second key issue to understand about the gospel. From tomorrow, Wednesday the 8th of April, as we approach day 13 of our lockdown, we'll consider the third question, what is God's solution to our problem, as we continue to track through Passion Week this year.